Welcome to the Rising Entrepreneurs Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and their journey. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hi, I'm Eric Evans.
And I'm Scott Thomas. We're your hosts for this podcast where we interview entrepreneurs in Austin, Texas about their trials, tribulations, and adventures.
This episode is brought to you by EO Austin, a community in Austin, Texas for influential entrepreneurs. Since 1995, EO Austin has connected business owners and entrepreneurs across industries to build community, share experiences, and inspire innovation. EO Austin's members are focused on business growth, personal development, and community engagement. To join the world's most influential community of entrepreneurs in Austin, visit eoaustin.com/joinEO.
And we have Chad Franson here from Rise 25, who's done thousands of interviews with successful entrepreneurs and CEOs. And we have flipped the script today, and he'll be interviewing us. Chad, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much, Scott. Eric, it's great to talk to you today. I'm looking forward to talking to you a little bit more about entrepreneurship. I think people love to hear about entrepreneurship because, as you mentioned earlier, it can be adventurous. So let me start with you, Eric. Have you always known that you were an entrepreneur, and what would you say your first entrepreneurial experience was?
I'd say I always kind of knew in the back of my head. You know, my dad was an entrepreneur, owned restaurants, but I never really kind of got the bug till I was in my 20s working in corporate America, and I just sort of constantly had this thing in the back of my neck that I needed to quit my job and go do something on my own.
What about you, Scott?
You know, I think ever since I started in corporate America, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I don't know if that's because it wasn't, I felt somehow it wasn't a fit. But my mom had her own law practice. My dad was corporate. So I was kind of split between both worlds. But after being in corporate for a while, it just didn't feel like it was a fit for me. And I always had the idea of, where I need to be, which was, starting my own business.
Okay, sounds good. So Eric, you mentioned you were working in corporate America and entrepreneurship was always kind of in the back of your head. Was the idea of actually doing it scary once the rubber hit the road?
Not totally scary. I mean, I wasn't quite in corporate America. I was in Hollywood, a kind of a wild company, startup, visual effects sort of environment. But that company started to fall apart 2008, like a lot of companies did. And then I looked around at the other jobs in that industry, and they were very corporate. It was going to go from working at this cool young startup to working at Sony, and it was not going to be as fun, it seemed. And so I was definitely mentally ready. I'd been working on some side projects on the side. I'd been building websites kind of for fun and playing around with affiliate marketing, different ways to make money on the internet back then, and a couple really lame websites that I had built and done some very basic SEO that definitely would not work in today's day and age. Started generating a decent amount of income for me, and so I just couldn't stop thinking about it. Like, man, if I quit my job and just go for this, like what'll happen? And if I really make a real effort. So I was ready.
What about you, Scott? Tell us about your entrepreneurship beginnings.
Yeah, I mean, I think it went way back to when I was, selling golf balls in my backyard when I was like 10, but the actual real business, although that, back then that was a real business.
Yeah.
I mean, I was working at an agency that was implementing some new technology. And, I just started chafing. I was working 80, 90 hours a week for somebody else. And I thought, this is something I could do. I could do this less poorly than the agency that I was working at. That was maybe not the best business plan, but that was sort of my thought process, right? And I had an opportunity with an old boss who said, hey, we need some help at the company I'm at. Would you be open to some consulting? And so that was just the catalyst for me to kind of make that leap. As well, my wife had started her business, and she'd come home every day really happy, and I'd come home every day really frustrated. And you put all those pieces together, right? And there's no sort of perfect timing, and then made the leap.
So I'm sure you have all sorts of entrepreneurial stories that you could tell, and maybe you will throughout the course of this podcast as you go along. But just kind of maybe take me through that time to now in terms of your entrepreneurial journey, Scott?
Um, yeah, I mean, boy, let's see. There are a lot of stories. I mean, one of them, a lot of them are around some employees, right? I've had a couple that very early on was interviewing and ultimately didn't have a place where um, you know where I was working, and we had employees working remotely, and we hired some folks that said they were working, but were in fact not ever working. And so I had to show up at their house or place of work and realize they had another job. So this is even before working remotely, and that's become a phenomenon. So that's one thing you never sort of draw up.
Yeah, I bet. What about you, Eric? What's kind of been something that stands out for you in terms of your entrepreneurial journey so far?
I mean, mine was a rambling start. I was trying to figure out exactly, what I wanted to do, and I had tried and failed, and had some moderate successes at a few different, random businesses. I had a food truck for a few years. I had some websites. I ended up getting a book deal out of one of these like content websites, but kind of ultimately, found a passion for the marketing and technology side of it. And so, once I kind of had something that was really going that I was passionate about, I've been focusing on that for a long time.
So you've had a kind of a variety of things. A food truck is a lot different than building websites. You just always kind of wanted to be your own boss. Is that it?
Uh, yeah, pretty much. I guess, I come from a restaurant background, so I wanted to
Mm.
give that a shot.
Hmm.
But after a few years of doing it, realized I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life, like, my father did. So I was much more interested in, technology and the internet and things like that. So
So as you mentioned, this podcast is brought to us by EO Austin, Entrepreneurs Organization in Austin. How did you first get involved in it, Eric?
So I had heard about EO back before I moved to Austin, and I was considering joining a long time ago. But right when I had my first EO qualified business, and a lot of people were encouraging me to join, was around the same time my wife was pregnant with our first kid, and I realized that it's all about carrying your own bag. What you put in is what you're going to get out of it. And I didn't think I was going to put in the effort to get the value that I needed back then. But when we finally made the decision to move to Austin, it had just been something in the back of my head for a long time. I had heard Austin had a great chapter. I knew it'd be just a great way to meet the kind of people that I want to connect with and hang out with. And so I jumped right in, both feet in about 3.5 years ago, and it's been amazing.
So so take me through, like, if a new member or like yourself, you join, and then kind of what happened for you, or what would happen for a new member?
Yeah, I mean, I think I got lucky. I knew some folks that were in the chapter. I got invited to a great forum that's been a huge part of my life the last couple of years. I also uh, took a leap of faith and signed up for the mentorship program that shout out to Kirk Ashey, who's been running it for a while and did a great job pairing me up, and learned a lot and met a lot of friends that way. And just try to go to as many events as I could to get the value out of it. And the chapter's grown, and unless you put yourself out there and try to go meet people, it's you won't, right? You got to make your own effort.
Do you have kind of like a specific role within EO Austin, or do you just kind of do as much as you can within the organization?
So Scott and I are the communications chairs this year for the board.
Okay, what goes into that?
This podcast, we're looking forward to getting it started and really rolling it out widely. And if any of the guys from or girls from EO Austin are watching, we'd love to have you as a guest.
Very nice. Hey, Scott, tell me a little bit about how you got involved with EO Austin.
Yeah, I had a couple friends who had joined, and I never heard of it, which is one reason, I'm communications chair, right? Just because it's, the best kept secret in some ways, and I've gotten a ton of value personally and professionally. So, yeah, I mean, I had an agency, and I was just struggling like any early entrepreneur with a lot of different things, and yeah, I was talking to a friend, and she said, "Hey, I'm part of EO. why don't you join? And then I started talking to other friends from different parts of my life, and they said, oh, I'm an EO, right? And then there's again something in the air, but it got a little lucky, right? And so that was 9 years ago. So yeah, I've been in it for a while. But yeah, it's been great. Some of my best friends are there, and it's really just a good sounding board and learning community that I've gotten a ton of value. And I'm not a joiner, which I think is a lot of EO people, right? We're all a little bit cut from a different cloth, and so it's nice to find your people.
Yeah, I bet. Eric, has there been kind of a experience that has been particularly impactful for you or transformative since you've joined EO?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a few. My forum has had some pretty incredible retreats that really I learned a lot personally and professionally, and have really gotten close with some folks on those retreats. So those have been great experiences. And then there's been some great events recently. Some speakers. This year in particular, we had the founders of the Black Rifle Coffee Company come and speak to us at a really cool venue. We had a real personal chat with Bill Perkins, the author of Die with Zero. And yeah, I had a lot of takeaways from some things this year in particular.
Great. What about you, Scott?
Yeah, it's almost too many to name, but my forum is one, right? So it's the group of entrepreneurs that sort of our virtual board. I've been in the same forum now. I'm the longest standing member, so after 9 years, like I'm the last person standing from the original group. But I mean that's been phenomenal, right? I mean, you're able to share personal, professional challenges and wins, right? I mean, the nice part is sometimes you can't always share the wins with your friends outside of EO. I mean, you can, but it's like, hey, I just did a helicopter ride, or I just sold my company, right? And you tell somebody who works at Google, which is a great company, right? And it's just a different language, and it just feels weird. So can't share those successes in the same way you can, and so that's been great. But yeah, I mean, like Eric mentioned, right, through 9 years, both what not to do, like Lance Armstrong spoke to us, as well as like people that sold multiple companies, Brene Brown, right? They're the access is amazing to, not just entrepreneurs, but just resources and people. I've been to Mexico City and basically kind of hung out in the home of one of the EO members there. So I could go on, and I won't because there's too many. But yeah, it's been phenomenal.
Yeah, sounds like it. Yeah, as Scott mentioned, Eric, entrepreneurship obviously comes with challenges, and other entrepreneurs could probably relate to the challenges maybe better than just kind of standard employees, I guess, could relate to them. Have there been any situations where the support from EO has really kind of helped you out?
Constantly, honestly. I mean, one of the biggest challenges of being an entrepreneur is just managing your stress levels and your mental health. I mean, you wake up one day and you feel like you're the king of the world and everything's going great, and then the next day you just feel awful. Like, what are you doing? You should shut down the business. The world's ending. Everybody hates you. It's just, you go through these ups and downs when you're running your own business, and it's hard to. There's rare opportunities to find someone who understands those problems. Kind of like Scott was saying a minute ago about celebrating your wins. Like, some of the challenges you face are going to be foreign to people who haven't, had employees and run their own company. And so, yeah, I mean, this is my space to have those conversations and vent and everything else.
Scott, has there been like a specific time for you where you were in the midst of something and the support that you got from EO was really beneficial?
Yeah, I mean, I think I thought, and I get tons of advice and value. I thought that was where I would see most of the value of EO, but I think it's been sort of the mental health and just sounding board, right? During COVID, was one of them, right? I mean, half of my business got shut down, right? And so, who do you talk to about that, right? And everyone was kind of going through something similar, right? And so, I think it's just that camaraderie and sharing, like, hey, what are you doing? This is what I'm doing, right? And there's no roadmap for a lot of people, right? And so it's just, having that support system is huge, right? And that, that's been a big one. And then it's just more, some of the more tactical stuff is helpful as well as on an ongoing basis. But I would say to me, it's that community and support that has been number one.
So, are there other entrepreneur kind of organizations that exist within Austin, or is EO Austin the primary one?
Yeah, there are a few, right? And so there's YPO, which is Young Presidents Organization, and there's another one here that is a little more tech focused, that is for profit. EO is not for profit. I think what makes EO unique is it's really the only one for founder owners, right? So YPO is a little different. It has young presidents, right? So it's got a mix of founders and sort of folks, professional managers at large companies or mid-sized companies under 40, right? And so kind of depending on what you're looking for, but EO's been great. I mean, I'm a founder owner, right? And so I found that it's the best. And the fact that it's global, that's the thing, right? Like it's a local, but also global organization. And so to me, that's, it's hard to beat that value. Obviously those are other options, but yeah, that's been great for me.
Yeah. Speaking of that, Eric, how has that kind of that global aspect been of benefit to you?
Yeah, this year was my first year to really experience any of that. I'd really just known the people in our chapter, but I got a chance to go to EO Eccentric just a few months ago here in Fort Worth, and meet people from all over the country in EO, and it was eye opening, right, to be in this much larger room of all people who felt like me, right, and it's fun to go to these larger events and realize how big EO is and how many interesting people there are to meet. It's sometimes you go to some events that there's not necessarily the kind of folks you want to get to know, and I feel like it's something like EO Eccentric. Every single person there is someone I want to talk to and meet and learn about their business, and so it's been really exciting. I think I'll get an opportunity to go to GLC in Honolulu this year as well. Which I'm really excited about. That's the next level, a truly global event. So I'm looking forward to it.
I know that you guys have learning events. Has one of those learning events directly impacted one of your business decisions, Scott?
Yeah, I mean, multiple, right? There's one in particular in Austin. It was a professor at UT. So we had access to UT, and basically you got an entrepreneurial MBA with a guy named Jim Nolan. And, basically he's been part of mergers and acquisitions for 40 years. Right. And so both as an advisor to a bank, he's actually kind of the godfather in some ways in Austin. So all his students end up becoming the future VCs. So anyways, all that to say, like, he basically put together this whole curriculum for 4 or 5 hours. And to me, that is still like the top event. I mean, it was like getting an MBA again, but tailored to us, right? And just the information he could share, right? And we threw every single question, and he knew everything. Like, and I'm rarely, sounds bad and a little egotistical, I'm really astounded by someone, but this guy was like an encyclopedia. And so for me, that just got me really interested in the process of selling and buying businesses, which is, I think, my next step in my journey, right? And so that was transformative for me. Yeah.
Hey, Eric. Do you think that entrepreneurs in Austin face any unique challenges, or is entrepreneurship no matter where you are?
I mean, I like to think it's pretty ubiquitous, right? And that was kind of my experience at this EO Eccentric event. Is like, there's people coming in from all over the country, and even there was a gentleman I met from South Africa who flew in to Fort Worth for this event, and you just realize over time that no matter what kind of business you have, that all the guys in my forum are doing very different things. And, a lot of people at the chapter, I haven't met anyone who's doing anything exactly like what I'm trying to do. But everyone's challenges have so much overlap. Like, everyone's facing a lot of the same problems that I think, obviously Austin is a very tech focused city. And it's been just wild, rapid growth the last few years. And so I think there's a intensity level that's outpacing some other cities in the country that is unique to Austin. But other than that, I think, a lot of entrepreneurs have a lot of the same things going on.
We talked about the support that EO members receive once they join, but I'm sure the opportunity to maybe provide that support or share your own experiences with other entrepreneurs who are maybe going through something you went through 2 years ago, that's got to be pretty fulfilling too. What do you think, Eric?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I can give one example that happened to me recently. Like, there's been some struggles in my own business at the stage we're at, trying to get to that next level of growth, right? Like you grow your company, you hit a plateau, and you got to kind of like undo a lot of the things you thought were working to get to that next phase. And so, and some of those things feel unique to me. Like, what do I do? And then, or they're just, I'm putting undue pressure and stress on myself. And, I talked to some other folks that are in the same spot, maybe on their second or third business, and have been through this before. And they're, they just kind of look at me with a different perspective, like, oh, well, this is what's supposed to happen. Like, that's normal for where you're at. Right. And it's like, oh, okay. I thought the world was ending, but actually, I'm hearing that this is normal from a lot of people. And they're walking me through how they went through this same phase, with their last company 5 years ago or whatnot. So it's just great to get that perspective from people.
Sure. Scott, have you found the opportunity to provide support is just as fulfilling for you?
Definitely. And I'll sort of address that question and another one, right? I think Austin is unique in, maybe a little bit more community and support than, at least I've heard this also, but I think I felt this than maybe some of the other cities, right? And maybe because it's a somewhat new entrepreneurial city, but yeah, I mean, I think for that reason, there's a culture in EO Austin of almost extreme support, right? And I think you find that in EO everywhere, but I think it's really pronounced here, right? I think there's just something about Austin that has sort of that unique community feel at large, and then that sort of permeates in Austin, because almost everybody who started a business here is a transplant, right? And I think that's a little bit different than some other cities, right? There's a little more mix of sort of homegrown, and I think because of that, everyone has to lean on each other, right? You don't have that sort of homegrown network to really lean on. And so everyone kind of leans on each other. And I think people are there for each other.
Sounds good. This is your first podcast episode that you guys have done so far for the EO Austin podcast. Eric, what are you most looking forward to with regard to hosting it?
Honestly, getting to know some chapter members that I haven't had a chance to meet yet. Even in the, Scott's been in EO here a lot longer than I have, but even in the few years I've been here, the chapter is almost doubled in size. And so, I love to get deep and talk about people's stories and learn more about them. And so personally, I think it's going to be a great way to meet some other folks from the chapter and help them get their stories out there.
Scott, what do you think listeners would maybe most gain from listening? Although I'm sure you guys will be swapping some great stories. What else?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the stories, right? I've already, I did a little bit of my own beginning podcast on my company and had a couple of EO members, and the stories were great. But yeah, I mean, I think some of those takeaways, are pretty insightful, especially on, I think what Eric was saying, like what the whole concept of stages, right? I think a lot of times you don't know where you're at, right? In your journey, a lot of times, right? And so when you hear someone who's at a higher level, or even, more at the inception, right? You can sort of compare and contrast where you're at, and, are you doing things like stage appropriate, not right, if that makes sense, right? So I think that's one of the things that I think people can get a lot of value from, just even that awareness.
Okay, sounds good. Well, we will certainly look forward to checking it out. Hey, Scott, Eric, it's been great to talk to you today. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks so much, Shad.
Yeah, thanks, Shad.
So long, everybody. Thanks for listening to the Rising Entrepreneurs Podcast. This episode is powered by Rise 25. Please subscribe and check out future episodes.